Hello, and welcome to Zelda Speedruns 2, Link's Awakening Switch Any Percent Glitchless Tournament 2021 Winners Bracket Round 2. We have jumns versus TGH, and we are almost ready to start. And on comms we have MChan Plays, and so I will let him take it over.
All right, hello everyone, and like she said, welcome back to the Link's Awakening Switch Tournament. My name is MChan38 or MChan Plays, and we have a great matchup here. We got jumns versus TGH, two really good players of this game, and I am really excited to watch this matchup here. Jumns is the former world record holder of the 100% category of this game, which 100% is a much different run than the what you're seeing today here, which is glitchless 90%. As in 100%, you are going around and collecting all of everything, and it's a really expansive category where you're just seeing places in the game that you haven't seen before in most other categories. But unfortunately, that's not what you're seeing today. But on the other hand, TGH, he is the world record holder of this category, so jumns does have quite a bit to work on here in this matchup, but definitely don't count jumns out because these are two really good players, so I'm expecting a really good race here. And it looks like the races have begun. So you guys are not seeing it, but these guys have set up RNG manipulation in order to set up the random puzzles in both Angler Tunnel and the Windfish Egg. And normally they are completely random, but with the RNG manipulation that they set up before this race, they don't have to worry about the randomness of those puzzles. And now up to the game here. So glitchless 90% of Link's Awakening Switch is exactly what it sounds like here. You are completing the game as fast as you can without the use of glitches. So what you're seeing throughout the run are just taking advantage of the basic mechanics of this game here. If you are familiar with speedruns of the Game Boy version, LA and LADX for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, all that knowledge from those versions, get ready to throw them out of the window, because none of those tricks or glitches apply to this version at all. So this game runs on a much different engine, much different version game, and as a result, it's just a completely different run. So they both got their sword here from the beach, and now they're going to be making their way up to the mysterious forest, where they are going to be grabbing magic powder and turning Terran back into human form, as he's, for whatever reason, it's never really explained in this game. At least I don't think that Terran is a raccoon. So every once in a while, this owl here is going to be talking to you about how to wake the windfish up. We don't really know anything about this windfish that the owl speaks of as of right now. We're just doing it because, well, we're told to, I guess. So they start by going to this cave right here. Throughout the game, they are going to be keeping track of how many enemies that they kill. And that is to manipulate a power-up known as Piece of Power. So, unique to Link's Awakening, there are two power-ups known as Piece of Power and Guardian Acorn. Guardian Acorn spawns whenever you kill a certain amount of enemies without getting hit at all. And so what you'll see these two runners do sometimes is if they know that a Guardian Acorn drop is coming, then they will try and take an intentional hit in order to ensure that a Guardian Acorn does not spawn at an inconvenient spot. Sometimes it's a little hard to keep track of that. Because it's hard. Because depending on where, if you're like grouped up with a bunch of enemies, then it'll be sometimes hard to keep track of like which enemy you got hit by and how many kills that you got before you got hit. On the other hand, Piece of Power, which is the more important one, spawns whenever you kill, I think it's 30 plus however many hearts you have. So in this case, they have 3 hearts right now, so add that by 30, then they'll get a Piece of Power drop within 33 kills. At least I hope I got that information correct. It's a little bit different in this version compared to LADX. But there's a few places where they'll be having Piece of Power because it saves quite a bit of time. Piece of Power is really good because you do extra damage to enemies, which are useful for a couple bosses later on, and as well as a few enemies that take a bunch of hits to defeat. As well as your movement speed is slightly increased. So, that extra speed boost, especially early on in the game where you don't have very many items, is really beneficial. Alright, so they both got the powder and turned Terran back into human form. And they're both relatively close, which is what we like to see this early on. It's really easy. The beginning part of the game is actually harder than they made it look, because it's actually really easy for you to take a bunch of damage up until this point of the game right away. And part of that is because the enemies in this version of Link's Awakening, they are definitely more aggressive than their LADX counterparts. So as a result, the enemies behave differently, and they actually try to go after you, as opposed to just like them like roaming freely. So both runners are going back to Mabe Village, and they're going to do a couple things now that they got the 50 rupees that they obtained from the forest. And that is that they are going to go over to... The first stop, they're going to go to the trendy game, which, if you know anything about the trendy game from LADX, I do not like Jump's position, but I think he knows what he's doing. But, if you know anything about trendy game from the original version, then... No! Okay, so... I had a feeling that wasn't going to work, so... That's going to set jumns behind by quite a bit early on here. This is kind of a painful mistake to make this early on in the game. Usually if you're grinding for a PB, then missing that Yoshi doll is enough to be a reset. But since this is a race, you don't really have that option. This is fine because he's still going to have enough rupees. He's going to have just enough rupees still. You can afford to lose once on the trendy game for the Yoshi doll, and still have enough rupees for everything else in the game. If you do happen to miss more tries, then there are a few backup rupees they can get in order to make up your rupees. But you really should not have to rely on those if you don't have to, as it's pretty slow. So TGH now has a pretty comfortable lead early on here, but this is fine. It's still early on in the game. A lot can still happen. Glitchless 90% is kind of a tough category to do, so a lot can happen here, depending on the risk/reward that they go for. So the runners here are... The reason they're picking up the Yoshi doll is because they're going to start up the trading side quest here. They're going to get the Yoshi doll from the training game, and then go all the way up to the top of the house in Mabe Village to give the Yoshi doll to the family for ribbon, and then give the ribbon to Chow Chow for dog food. And then they do have the option to trade the dog food in for later on, or at least right now, but... with the way the route works, it's a little bit inconvenient to go down to the beach and then all the way around to enter the first dungeon here to get bananas. So they're going to be doing that after this dungeon. So here we are in the first dungeon, which is known as Tail Cave. It is the first dungeon. It's not terribly difficult, but there is some randomness at the very end of the dungeon, which hopefully does not affect the race too much. Although, depending on what kind of randomness that happens within this dungeon, it could potentially give jumns a little bit of time to catch up, but we'll see what happens here. Aside from that, the first dungeon is relatively straightforward. They're going to be going straight to the item of the dungeon here, which is the Rock's Feather, and it's a really powerful item. Not as powerful as in the original version. If you know anything about the original version, you'll know that the Rock's Feather allows you to perform some really minor glitches that break the game substantially. And that used to be known as super jumps, but unfortunately super jumps don't work, mainly because another trick from the Game Boy version does not work in this version, known as wall clipping, which is simply just clipping yourself into a wall by a few pixels, which is enough for the game to give you weird results. And because you can't wall clip, you cannot do super jumps. So we have to do this dungeon kind of the intentional way here. So you grab that first key that TGH got right there. You could have got that first thing, but the very first key that you get in the game will act as a text box, which is why they get this key after they get the Rock's Feather. And what they did right after getting the Rock's Feather was auto-loading. So the game has autosave, and when the game autosaves, it saves onto a whole different file that you could actually load from. And they're going to be using that file to access shortcuts in order to minimize backtracking. You're going to be seeing that quite a bit in almost every dungeon, not every dungeon. And then there's also a few other caves that have this auto-load function as well. If you auto-load from an overworld, then you'll spawn at the exact place that you saved at. Whereas if you auto-load from a cave or a dungeon, then you'll start at the very beginning, from like the last entrance that you come from. And I do say last entrance because some dungeons have multiple entrances. So that was the first mini boss there for TGH. That was Rolling Bones. Rolling Bones is the way you fight Rolling Bones is you want to trap the boss into a corner. Otherwise, you don't want to let him go to the other side, as you can see here on Jump 10 right here. Having a little bit of trouble with Rolling Bones, but that's okay. Meanwhile, TGH is off to a pretty difficult boss here. We got Moldorm. He is a hamburger, the worst kind of hamburger because he's a vegetable burger without any meat. But he has no problem with Moldorm. Let's see how the fight goes for jumps here. Buzz, buzz, Roz. So the way you fight Moldorm, ideally, is to use 2 Spin Slashes against Moldorm, as Moldorm has 4 HP, and Spin Slashes do 2 damage. Okay, there we go. A little bit of trouble there with Moldorm on Jum's side, but that's fine right there. The most important part, which is sometimes easy to do, is you don't fall off during the fight. If you fall off during the fight, then Moldorm regains his HP, and you gotta restart the entire fight all over again. It's super miserable, and it's not really something that you want happen to you very early on in the race here. So, still relatively close. TGH still has a somewhat comfortable lead. And they have completed the first dungeon here. They need all 8 instruments here in order to access the final area, the Windfish's egg. So with that now, TGH is now going to go all the way back down to the beach here, and he is going to trade the dog food that he got from Chow Chow to this alligator right here, Crocodile. and he's gonna get bananas. So there's quite a bit to explain early on in the race, but the Rock's Feather, I didn't explain the Rock's Feather, but the Rock's Feather allows you to jump. It's a very important mechanic in any video game. Unfortunately, though, it's a little bit nerfed in this version because when you jump in this game, Link lands on his feet, which is slow. So you want to try not to jump when you don't need to jump. But either way, it's still a pretty cool item. So the kids right there are gonna let you know that some moblins came to town and stole Bow Wow, and now we have to retrieve Bow Wow back. In most other categories of this game, if you are using glitches, there is a trick known as Bow Wow Skip, where you do something pretty complex, but since this is glitchless, then you will not be seeing Bow Wow Skip. So going into the Moblin hideout here, and we'll see how this goes. So as you can see, powder is really powerful. So they're using powder in order to defeat these guys pretty quickly. TGH tries to manipulate the moblins. Nice. TGH manipulates the moblins' positions in order to group them up, so that way he can use less powder on the moblins. So TGH just defeated the Moblin King, which I will explain after Jumps defeats his fight of the Moblin King. Oh no, okay. So, unfortunately, yeah, as you can see, this is an example that this fight is actually harder than people make it look. There's a very precise rhythm with the Moblin King that you have to maintain in order to get a 1 cycle for the fight. Otherwise, you lose about like 7 seconds. It's a pretty miserable time loss. So unfortunately, the game's not really working in Jump's favor as of right now. But yeah, so you do need a precise rhythm. If you're slightly off rhythm, then that can be enough to throw off the 1 cycle for the Moblin King. So it is a pretty tough fight. The TGH is now in Bottle Grotto. You do need Bow Wow in order to open up the second dungeon here. The dungeon is guarded by these flowers here. If you try to return Bow Wow to Madame Meow Meow, like right now, then Madame Meow Meow is going to let you know, is going to just ask you to just hang out with Bow Wow a bit, which implies that you need Bow Wow in order to access the second dungeon. And Bow Wow can eat a bunch of enemies, which does count towards your kill count. So sometimes Bow Wow can mess up. No! Jumps takes a death right before opening Dungeon 2. This is a huge time loss now for Jumps. Oh, but he spawns right over here, right in front of the dungeon, so that time loss is actually not as huge as I thought it was, so he's still not super far behind. But unfortunately, he does still have quite a bit to work on. Like I said, the beginning of the game is pretty tough when you don't have very much to work with. But later on in the game, when you have more equipment, it can be the rest of the run can be either easier or harder, depending on like some of the strats that you go for and how conservative you want to play. Teach getting a piece of power there, which Since he got it after Hinox, I'm going to assume that he is grabbing the piece of power just for movement speed increase. As, you know, he could one-shot some enemies in the upcoming room, the Nightmare Key room, but it doesn't really benefit that much. But you can kind of see that, you can kind of see the movement speed increase on TGH's screen if you kind of look and compare the difference between Teach's piece of power up right now as opposed to Jumps' blocking speed. Unfortunately, unlike in LADX, piece of power only lasts for a certain amount of time, whereas in LADX, it lasts until you get hit 3 times. So in LADX runs, you can see runners keep piece of power all the way through an entire dungeon. So Teach has got through the what's considered the worst room of the game, the Nightmare Key room, and that's because you have to defeat the enemies in a certain order, and which sounds easy, but one of the enemies that you don't want to defeat can get in your way sometimes, and it really sucks when it does, because then you have to reset the room if that happens. So you have to use that pot in order to make that moving platform go down. And then, now we're up to the boss, the Genie. It's a very exciting boss. I'm really excited for Teach to fight Genie. Meanwhile, Jumps is has his attempt at the worst room of the game. No trouble here. Just like that. That's what we like to see. Now Jumps gets his Nightmare Key right there. In the glitched any percents, there's actually a way where you can sequence break through the entire dungeon here, and that is what we call. There's 2 names for it. There's the Super Hinox Throw or Hinox Warp. I think more people nowadays call it the Hinox Warp, which allows you to do something very complicated with the Hinox mini boss that they both bought in order to skip through the rest of the dungeon, which also includes skipping the Genie fight as well. But the unfortunate part about that trick is that it's really difficult, and also, with their current equipment, random. Now TGH is on a second phase of the Genie. This is where things get somewhat more exciting here. He has to guess which Genie is the right Genie, and then just slash the real Genie. And the real Genie is the one that's farthest away from the center, which he managed to successfully defeat the Genie just like that. And now he is done with the second dungeon. Unlike in the original version, the Genie fight is a little bit more straightforward in this version, whereas in the original version there are some really fast strategies that you can do to quick kill the fight in order to make the fight a little bit more exciting, but this is the way that we have to fight Genie. So Teach actually skipped the heart container for this dungeon, and one of the newer changes that this version has, and this applies with many modern Zelda games, is the ability to skip heart containers. So whenever you beat a dungeon, you get a heart container, and in older Zelda games you're required to pick up the heart container, but in this version you can skip it, and it does save time, but with the trade-off that you'll have significantly less health later on in the game, where enemies are going to do more damage, so it's going to be a little bit trickier to survive. So unless you're really good and really confident in Link's Awakening Switch, then you can beat the game with very few amount of hearts. In the world record, if you're going for a world record, then they usually get maybe 2 heart containers, sometimes 3, depending on how much health they have at the very end of the game. But they get 2 extra heart containers. The first one being after the first dungeon. You can beat this game with 3 hearts, but it's really tricky to do. And TGH, with the stretch that TGH goes for, he is going to need the extra health for some later strats. But yeah, it does save time. But like I said, the trade-off is you'll have less health, and it's pretty risky. But TGH has no fear. He's going to go in with all the confidence that he has. Jumns, meanwhile, picked up the heart container, so he is going to have 1 extra heart than TGH for the later parts of the game, which, you know, we'll see if that pays off for him. You know, if he ever runs into a similar situation as TGH, then that 1 extra heart container can be very helpful. So we just missed it. TGH just died. This run now sucks for him. Just kidding, as that death is intentional. When you can steal in this game, it's a returning mechanic from Link's Awakening Deluxe and also Link's Awakening Original. But you can steal items, and when you steal, you actually keep the item. So that's helpful. That way, these 2 runners don't have to grind like 1,200 rupees in order to get what they need in this game. That'd be a lot of rupee grinding. So, but it's worth it to get the shovel and bow really early. The bow, especially, that way you can, you know, do some really cool strats, like what we just saw a little bit earlier. TGH used what's known as a bomb arrow. Jumps having a little bit of trouble stealing here. Okay, there we go. He got the shovel just fine. Yeah, so bomb arrows is a hidden mechanic in this game. In the original version, they never really tell you about it, but in this version, they do tell you about it. If you look at the back of the box cover of this game, they actually tell you about bomb arrows, which means that the developers knew that bomb arrows exist, which means it's not a glitch. Which is a nice, you know, hidden Easter egg that, you know, makes a return in later Zelda games such as Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild. So now we're off to Kennel Castle, which is, if you're Alpha 5, this is your favorite part of the game. Kennel Castle is a nice little mini dungeon. It's not really considered a dungeon according to like the official game manual, I guess you could say. But it's a nice little mini side quest where some guy named Richard has well, if you go to Richard in his villa in Ukuku Prairie, he's going to request that you retrieve the 5 golden leaves, because apparently he can't get the 5 golden leaves off by himself. But if you already know about the side quest, then you don't have to go to Richard right away. This saves some backtracking. Okay, very nice kill for TGH on that. On that guy right there. There's 5 golden leaves that you have to get in the Kennel Castle, and right now he has 3. So there's 2 different piece of power routes that you can go for early on in this game. One of them is to have piece of power for the Hinox in Dungeon 2, which requires you to kill quite a bit of enemies early on. And then the second piece of power route that the 2 runners can go for is the one in Kennel Castle, which Jumps had piece of power in D2, so he's not going to have piece of power for this. And neither is TGH, so they're both losing quite a substantial amount of time here in this Kennel Castle segment. But that's fine. It just means that you're going to take more hits to defeat the ball and chain guard, and that's what piece of power would be useful for. Oh, TGH shooting the arrow the wrong way. Misses the other one right there. It's going to be very scary for him, as arrow management is actually really precise in this route. So TGH might have to put himself in situations where he has to conserve some of his arrows. Maybe he has to forego some bomb arrows and instead use bombs for parts where he needs bombs. Either way, this is not a situation that you want to put yourself in. So, Jump's about to make his way to his final 3 golden leaves, while TGH is going to be making his way to Richard's Villa here. So this is Richard right here. This is who you're supposed to talk to. But because we already got the golden leaves, all we have to do is just talk to him twice, and then he gives us access to his backyard, which is known as Pothole Field. I don't really know why his backyard has a bunch of pits. I don't know how he survives by having a bunch of pits in his backyard. But either way, the purpose of going into Rich's backyard is because he has the key to the next dungeon. And as we all know, there is a trick known as Villa Skip, and where you can glitch through and go to the backyard without having to go to Kennel Castle at all, and just get the slime key right away. But obviously, you know, that's a glitch, and that's not allowed. If there was some way to, you know, find a glitchless method to skip having to go to Kennel Castle just to go to Richard's backyard, then that would be a pretty huge time save. It is about a 6 to 7 minute detour to go to Kennel Castle. He does have to go around and make his way to the next dungeon, which is Key Cavern, or Slime Cavern, depending on how you want to consider this dungeon. As, you know, there can be 2 different names. The key is called Slime Key, so it would make sense for some people to call it Slime Cavern. But officially it's called Key Cavern. This first room that TGH just went through is a really painful room right off the bat, as these bombies have some pretty erratic movement. But he goes through these first couple of rooms no problem. Jumns has already gone through Kennel Castle, and now he's going to be getting his slime key. So you are seeing these guys do all these jumps, and that's because when you're walking through grass, you move a lot slower. So they are jumping, even though jumping has this landing lag whenever you jump and land on your feet. It still works to jump over all of these patches of grass here. So TGH just threw a bomb right there at that bombable wall. You don't know it's a bombable wall unless you clink your sword off to that wall to know that it's a bombable wall. But he blows that up now, in 1 to save an arrow, and 2, well, it's just to get it out of the way early. TGH actually having trouble with Didango snakes here. With that second one particularly. The first one went pretty well. But yeah, the way you fight Didango snakes is really annoying in this game. There used to be a glitch in the original version where if you defeat if there's 2 mini-bosses and you defeat 1 mini-boss, and you leave the screen and come back, then the second mini-boss is dead. Which does apply with the Didango snakes, but unfortunately, Grotto got really smart with that and decided, you can't do this glitch anymore. If you attempt it, then both mini-bosses are going to come back, and then you gotta redo the fight. So you do have to defeat both Didango snakes this time around. There is a trick known as Didango Skip, which you're not going to be seeing either of these runners do because, well, that's illegal in this run. Grezzo will come to your house and turn off your console if you attempt Didango Skip in a glitchless run. So TGH got the Pegasus boots, which allows you to dash, and dashing is really cool in this game, as you can actually dash diagonally, unlike in LADX. So it allows for some pretty interesting movement. On top of that, because they took away screen transitions in this version, you can actually... It opens up for some really interesting combinations of dashes for later screens. And after this dungeon, you're going to be seeing that how insane dashing is in this version of the game. So, they're getting their final key of the dungeon, or actually it's not their final key, but it's their last key for this roundabout right here. Meanwhile, Jumps did just obtain his Nightmare Key and Pegasus boots, and is going to get his second key? I don't really keep track of how many keys there are. I just know that this is the route. Okay, so this is a little unfortunate right here. Getting a bit of a unfortunate pattern right there. If you slash the bombies while they are moving around, then it actually resets their pattern, or it actually resets their timer as to when they're going to explode. But here we are. Teach is now moving on to Slime Eye or Gigazol. They're actually playing on the German version because German actually happens to have the fewest amount of text. In a lot of video games in general, not even just the Zelda games, you want to play in Japanese because of fewer text. But because the text is in boxes, Japanese doesn't really save a whole lot of time. So German just happens to have the fewest amount of text in this version of the game. And it is really easy to switch to German in this game because it is a console setting, so you don't have to go out of your way to buy like a European Switch as well as a German version Link's Awakening copy. So this game is very much accessible as a result. Jump's taking a bonk right there. So, this is very likely that the heart container that Teach just got is probably going to be his last heart container he gets throughout the run, unless he runs into situations where he's really low on health after some difficult dungeons. Knowing him, this is probably going to be his last heart container that he gets. So he's going to be doing the rest of the game with 5 hearts, which can be a little bit risky. There are enemies later on in the game that will do 2 hearts of damage, which means you can only afford up to 3 hits if he runs into trouble. But he should be fine. He does have a pretty comfortable lead over Jumps, but there are still some tricky parts of the game, so it's still not over yet. Nice fight for Jumps right there. And meanwhile, Jumps does pick up this heart container, so he's going to have 6 hearts. 1 extra heart over, than TGH, which, like I said, there are benefits into having more hearts. Teach goes back to May Village after talking to the Walrus, which talking to a Walrus TGH needs to talk to the Walrus in order to activate Marin at the beach. There is another way, which doesn't work in the original version. That is to talk to the Walrus. Talking to a Walrus in the original version does not spawn Marin at the beach, so you do have. So in the original version, you do have to do what they are not doing here in this race, which is to complete a couple extra steps of the training sequence. And that is to go around the third dungeon and meet up with Terran, who will be at a tree with a beehive. And then trade in the honeycomb to Chef Bear in Animal Village. But since in this version, talking to Walrus does activate Marin at the beach, they can skip a few extra steps in the training sequence, which might sound questionable. For those who are not familiar with Link's Awakening Switch speedruns, might be wondering how they're going to go through the rest of the game without even doing the trade sequence. As some of you guys might know, what's really common upon many viewers of like glitchless speedruns in general, not even just pertaining to this game or other Zelda games, is when you think of glitchless, you might think that, you know, glitchless means going through the game as fast as you can by like the traditional way of the game. And, you know, you are seeing a somewhat traditional route. What is Jumns doing? Jumns is not getting the ocarina. I don't know. Okay, he realizes it now that he's skipping the ocarina. Okay, if he realized it later, then that would have been a little problematic. But yeah, so glitchless. You might think it means going through the game by using the traditional route, and you are seeing a pretty traditional route of the game here. However, sequence breaks are still allowed in glitchless, so they are going to be skipping quite a significant portion of the game by not doing the rest of the trade sequence. So Teach just went on a date with Marin, and he's taking. And unfortunately, this is a really short date. But he brings Marin over here to Animal Village to wake up the Walrus right here. Sadly, no Walrus Skip. Jumps takes a bonk right there. Okay, good. Jumps over the apples. The apples will generate a text box if you pick them up. So it's a good thing that he jumped over those apples right there. Takes a bonk right there. If you try to dash in between two bushes, then you do bonk. But now here we are, TGH taking on Lanmolas here, which is a very tricky fight. Oh no, he's gonna opt for a 3 cycle here. Yeah, this fight can be pretty frustrating to do really quickly. If you guys know anything about A Link to the Past speedruns, might know that Lanmola is a very frustrating boss to grind out, and this is no exception to this game. Yeah, so Lanmola has a few different patterns that you have to deal with. You can beat Lanmola in 1 cycle, which is 1 jump that he does. But there are some patterns where Lanmola is going to do what's known as a short hop, where he does a very short hop, which doesn't give you very much time to do a 1 cycle. And I believe a 1 cycle is still possible if the Lanmola does do a short hop, but it's really difficult. So there's some bit of randomness into the fight. And yes, as in response to the chat, yes, that is correct right there. the middle of the quicksand you can fall through, which you don't want to do. The key can fall into the middle of the quicksand as well. So you have to. So even when you beat Landmola without falling down, you do have to make sure that you grab the key. Depending on where you defeat Landmola at, Teach. Oh, okay. I thought he warped to the wrong area, but he's actually going to do. Okay, I'm gonna hold that thought. That's because Teach is gonna do a somewhat recent route change. It's a minor route change for this right here, and that is that he's gonna go for this really precise water dash, followed by his ladder climb. That is really fast right there. So normally you would warp to Dampe's Shack in order to get over here, but this saves like a couple seconds. But unfortunately, really difficult. The unfortunate thing is if you fail this, well, if you're going for this route, you're committed to it. You cannot back down at it. So if it takes you multiple tries, then unfortunately you have to commit to this. Jumns defeats Landmola right there. The key's in a good position where he's not going to fall down. There we go. That's very nice. In the 100% category, you have to fall down the quicksand because there's a heart piece in the cave that the quicksand is going to lead you to. So if the key falls down, then, you know, you lose like maybe a second or two, but it's not it's not as punishable because you have to fall down there anyway in 100%, but this is any percent, not 100%, so they're not worrying about getting heart pieces. Alright, so this cave is known as the Obstacle Cave because in the original version there's a trick called Obstacle Skip, but Obstacle Skip does not save any time in this version, which is good because Obstacle Skip is not a good trick. Fight me. But now Teach is off to Angler Tunnel, or Wunder Tunnel, as you can see on the screen right there. So previously, in older developments of the speedrun, Angler Tunnel used to be a kind of unexciting dungeon, but with a trick a couple years old now, I think. There is a trick called the bomb jump, where it breaks about half the dungeon. So first off, he's gonna get these 2 keys right here, and then he's going to perform the bomb jump. So he angles himself at a pretty precise angle, and then delays his movement by doing a couple slashes, and then sets up a nice jump right there, and he gets it. That is kind of tricky to get, but it does save a substantial amount of time this dungeon. As normally, after you grab the 2 keys, then you would actually go back to the beginning of the dungeon and go to the bottom part in order to get to that cross jump instead. And then, when you do the cross jump, you would have to go around the whole outer part of the second half in order to get another key, but that skips all that. And he can go straight to Cue Ball and get the flippers. Now, Cue Ball is the worst boss in the game. Easily, without a doubt, his hitbox is pretty bad. TGH did make that fight look really easy. Meanwhile, you're seeing a more traditional route to get to the Angler keyhole on Jump's screen. And like I said, this only loses about a couple seconds, but this is way more consistent. So choosing consistency over the risk reward, not a bad idea. And now Teach is going to go over here to Mambo, and he's going to get Mambo's song, which is a song that allows you to warp in any warp. So they really busted this song, as previously you would only warp to Mambo's Pond, but in this version you can warp to any warping point, which also brings to attention there's a lot more warping points in this version, as well as you can warp to any warping point from any warping point whenever you want, as opposed to in the original version where there's a particular order that the game warps you at. So sometimes you'd have to warp twice in order to get to some places. But the warps is a really nice quality of life change in this version. So even if it was possible to skip the ocarina in this game, it wouldn't really be worth it as a result, because the transportation in this game is so powerful. So he warps back to Animal Village in order to go over here to the Armos Maze. You're supposed to do this Armos Maze after the 5th dungeon, but he's doing it now. There's really no difference in time for doing this now or after D5, but most people choose to do it before D5 because there would be an animal in your way if you do this after D5. And TJ's arrow count looks a little bit scary. He's going to have 2 arrows. There's 2 more arrows here, which he's going to leave him at 4, but he is going to have 2 arrows after this upcoming fight, the Armos Maze fight, right here. Nice first try bomb jump for jumps right there. It's really good on his end. Double first try bomb jumps is always a good thing, as it looks really, you feel really bad if you fail the bomb jump. And you're going to be seeing a somewhat different strat for jumps here. Oh no, this is the opening for the fight here. This is now unfortunate. If you mess up this fight, then it is really bad. Because now look at this. He has to find a way to stun lock cue ball. This is a really good backup. Oh, he almost got the backup right there. That would have been really good. Okay, I think he has 1 more hit left for. Okay, yeah, there we go. Yeah, this is a demonstration of how cue ball is, without a doubt, the worst fight in the game. And now it teaches off to Dungeon 5. There's a lot of things I'm skipping over, but what you're seeing on Jump's side, and TGH has already done it now, is you might notice that these guys are actually not going to complete Dungeon 4. And the reason is because if you complete Dungeon 4 now, then there will be a ghost that appears. And you have to take the ghost to his house and then to his grave, and it takes like 3 minutes. It sucks. But by doing Dungeon 4 last, they're going to be doing Dungeon 4 last, and they're going to be completing the rest of the dungeon last, in order to skip having to do the ghost quest. In the original version, there's a specific check that the game checks for the ghost to not appear, and that is to get the level 2 bracelet, or in this version, the more powerful bracelet, as they call it. And once you get that item, then the ghost just will not appear at all. That is not the case in this version. They got pretty smart with that sequence break, and that you have to, and that the ghost will appear even when you get the more powerful bracelet in this version. So as a result, going to Dungeon 6 early doesn't really work. And the reason that they made this change is because the reward that you get for completing the ghost quest is a bottle, and if the ghost cannot appear, that means you cannot 100% the game anymore. So TGH is now in Dungeon 5, which is, in my opinion, one of the hardest dungeons to optimize, because there's a lot of enemies. There's there's a lot of ways where you can lose a minor bit of time, and it bleeds if things go wrong. Enemy patterns are random. You can get hit pretty easily. And there's just not really very many ways to skip large parts of the dungeon. There is a sequence break that TGH is going to do at the end of this dungeon, but even then, you're still doing quite a significant portion of the dungeon. So the gimmick behind this dungeon is Master Stalfos stole the item of the dungeon, the hookshot, and you have to go around the dungeon in order to fight Master Stalfos. And you do have to fight Master Stalfos in order. You can't just like know which room that he's going to appear in. Otherwise, they definitely would have fought Master Stalfos in order, but here we go. This is the third fight down, and now he's going to be going to his fourth fight, which is in the next room. Well, in the room of the first key that TGH got. Jumps is now on his way to Dungeon 5 here, and unfortunately, he is more than half the dungeon behind here, so he does have quite a bit to work on. Ooh, Teach misses the last slash right there, but no problem. Fortunately, bomb management is not as precise as arrow management, so there are plenty of in the next dungeon. He'll have a lot of opportunities to refill in bombs. Meanwhile, Jump's getting started on his Dungeon 5 right here. Very nice. Yeah, so unfortunately, due to some like tricks that they patched out in this version compared to the original, TGH is now going to go back all the way over here to get the Nightmare Key. There used to be a sequence break where you can do something called what's known as dumb jump, because it's a really precise dash jump in order to get across a very large pit in order to get the Nightmare Key early. But they widened this pit so that you can't even do that anymore. So there's the Nightmare Key right there for TGH. And now he's going to auto-load again, just to go to the boss. Jump's having a little bit of trouble here. Gets a piece of power drop right there, right before Master Stalfos 1, which probably means he's unlikely to get piece of power for Slime-Eel at the very end of the dungeon. And we just saw a piece of power drop for TGH there, which means he's not going to have piece of power for Slime-Eel, for sure. I think it's still possible for Jumps to still have piece of power for before Slime-Eel, but he has to kill a lot of enemies in this dungeon. So Teach is going to be doing something called hookshot skewing. That's a very fast setup right there. It's actually a lot more precise than he made it look. As you do have to skew your angle in mid-air at a very precise angle and then hookshot to the top block right there. Now, what's interesting about this dungeon is doing that hookshot skew skips a key, and even when you grab that extra key, it allows you to skip a mini boss that is otherwise, well, supposedly required, but well, if you know how to go through this dungeon, you can completely skip this mini boss, and it's known as Goma. And well, all you need to know about Goma is that Goma is supposed to be like the official mini-boss. And by official mini-boss, meaning that usually with dungeons in this game, when you defeat a mini-boss, you get a warp portal. So you may notice that if you paid attention, that Master Stalfos does not give you a warp portal when you beat him. And so Goma is the official mini-boss of Dungeon 5, but they don't even go to Goma at all. And even then, the warp portal is just not even that useful. The Teach has had a really nice Slime-Eel fight right there. The way Slime-Eel works is you pick a side, and you have a 50% chance at getting the side correct. And then just pull the Slime-Eel out of his cave, and then just slash Slime-Eel a bunch of times. It used to be 8 in the original version, but now it's 16 in this version. If you have Piece of Power, then you can one cycle the fight if you're really lucky. But it's really precise. But since none of these guys are going to have Piece of Power for Slime-Eel, they're going to have to settle in for a 2-cycle. So TGH and Jumps have already went through the Armos Maze and fought Armos Knight to get the base key. They don't have to worry about doing that again, and they can just go straight to Dungeon 6, Face Shrine. So he opens up the keyhole, Dungeon 6 opens. Meanwhile, on Jum's end, he just got the hookshot and is now making his way to the Nightmare Key. I keep focusing on TGH's screen, but Jum's, you know, aside from him having a rough start early on, his run is actually not that bad. And he's definitely not a bad player. He's capable of getting really good times. You know, with him being the former world record holder of 100% and has a really competitive time in the glitched any percent category. But you know, there's only so much you can do when you get some pretty unfortunate luck really early on in the run. So while it is unfortunate for him right now, his run is still not a bad run, all things considered. Meanwhile, in Face Shrine, this Face Shrine is probably the longest dungeon in the game without any major sequence breaks. This dungeon is like 7 to 8 minutes long. Start by going to the left side here to get a couple keys. Or at least get a key in order to do the right side of this dungeon. Very nice right there. Oh, Jump's having a little bit of trouble with the hookshot skew. Oh, needs to move a little bit more. Okay, there we go, he gets it. So he is not going to have piece of power for the slime eel fights. TJ is now in the tile room. There's a couple tile rooms that he's going to be going through throughout the game. There's 2 tile rooms in this dungeon, there's 1 tile room later on. And the tile room is pretty unexciting. You just have to defeat all the tiles as fast as you can, basically. It's really the only way to speed that room up. So here we go, let's go ahead and watch Jumps fight Wall Snake here. There's 2 boss fights going on at the same time here. Nice! That ball grab that TGH just got is really precise. You have to. There's a couple things that has to happen in order for that trick to work right there. And the first is that you have to enter the Smasher room in a very precise angle, and then have a precise, very tight movement to the ball in order to barely beat Smasher to the ball. Jumps is not having the most fortunate luck against Slime Meal here. He gets a good first pull right there, so he should have a few more hits left to go for Wall Snake. As long as Wall Snake cooperates here. That's a fake form right there. We haven't seen that on TGH's screen. TGH got pretty lucky for not having piece of power. Oh no, that's maybe 1 or 2 hits, possibly? Oh no, Jumps needs to be careful. He has half a heart left. He cannot afford to take another hit here. He has to be very careful. Okay, that's good, that's good, that's good. Very nice, okay. That was a really big Monka S moment there for Jumps. One more hit right there, he would have certainly been dead. And dying to Slime Eel loses a substantial amount of time. So that is definitely not something you want to put yourself in. He gets the extra heart container. I don't blame him. Going through the beginning part of Dungeon 6 with just half a heart is really scary. So, definitely not a bad decision on his end right there. TGH, meanwhile, gets Horsehead first try. How does he do it? I can't believe it. It's a 25% chance at getting Horsehead first try. Just kidding. They made Horsehead skill-based in this version. You have to throw the Horsehead at specific spots in order for the Horsehead to stand up. Otherwise, they're going to continue to lay down flat no matter where you throw the Horseheads. So, Horsehead, you'll always get first try Horsehead as long as you do everything correctly. Meanwhile, TGH is fighting Didango Snakes round 2. This is the second time we're fighting Didango Snakes. This time it's really tricky because you have less room to work with to maneuver around these snakes. So it's a bit of a harder fight this time around. But he gets through the fight no problem. And is going to be throwing the pot at the chest right there in order to get his Nightmare Key, and then off to the very end of the dungeon. So as a result, now Jumns is an entire dungeon behind, and like I said, this dungeon's about 7 to 8 minutes long, so this is a pretty significant lead that Teach has over Jumns. If you somehow fall into that portal right there, it sends you back to the beginning of the dungeon, which you don't want. Now here we are, TGH off to the boss of the dungeon, which is Facade. Or some ridiculous name that he has in German that I can't even pronounce. And there's a couple different strats that you can do for Facade. Let's see what Teach is going to go for. Okay, he's going to go for this really aggressive fight right here, where he is going to be bomb arrowing the tiles while they are hovering over Facade in order to do damage to Facade that way. Oh, messes up. Okay, so now this fight's gonna be really scary now. Oh man, this is not going well. So now he has to go for this. Okay, that's not bad. If he spawns in the corner right there, then that's not the end of the world. You can actually just shoot a bomb arrow at the wall. Jumps had a little bit of issue there with the Wizard of Peg room. Now he's going to go to the right side now that he got his key. So in the original version, the Facade fight used to be like very straightforward. You just place bombs and then you win. But they made the fight really slightly harder in this version because well, not slightly, actually. It's much harder. You can't just place bombs on Facade's face. And the face actually hits you in this version. So you can't just place bombs on top of him. Jumps did not get the early grab for the ball right there for Smasher. Okay, very nice. Alright, so now TJ is going to be moving on to the Signpost Maze, which is a very unexciting part of the run here. You have to go around this entire maze and read a bunch of signs. Each sign is going to lead you to another sign that you have to go to. If you read the wrong sign or read the same sign twice, then you gotta redo the entire Signpost Maze all over again. Whoa! That was a crazy piece of power spawn right there. He managed to avoid that piece of power drop just fine. Meanwhile, Jumns is going to take advantage of the warping portal that he got from defeating Smasher, and is now going to traverse to get to the Nightmare Key. And no problem for TGH on the Signpost Maze. And now TJ is going to be listening to the second best song in the game. It is so good they remixed the song. This is a jam right here. I really like music that have like these beats right here, and these beats are really like fun to jam with. What I like about music in general. The best song in the game, in my opinion, is Animal Village. So now with the Frog Song of Soul that TGH got, he's going to use that to revive this rooster right here. Jumps not having the best luck on the Didango Snake right there. Okay, defeats one. Also, you can't just cheese this fight where you can just stack bombs on the Didango Snakes like you can in the original version. You have to... The Didango Snakes move 4 times before they're able to move with their mouth open for you to place bombs in their mouths. Which is why you see both these runners here wait for a bit during a Didango Snake fight before placing another bomb. Alright, TGH's second attempt at the Obstacle Cave, where he will not be doing Obstacle Skip. Because again, Obstacle Skip is not a good trick. And now for Jum's attempt at Facade. Meanwhile, TGH is about to go to the Rooster Cave. And if you know anything about the Rooster Cave in Link's Awakening speedruns, you might be familiar with what's known as Rooster Skip. Since TGH already has the Rooster, he's not going to be pulling off Rooster Skip. Instead, this is a more trivial Rooster Cave right here. Just like that, no problem. He got Rooster Skip. Everybody clap. Having a little bit... Okay, saving a little bit of time over TGH during that fight right there. Now TGH is going to be making his climb all the way up to the 7th dungeon. Not a whole lot to say here. Jumps will be going through his Signpost Maze to get his Frog Song of Soul. TGH is going to be making his way to Dungeon 7. So again, still a pretty significant lead over between the two. But TGH is doing a pretty aggressive play by having significantly lower hearts, so it might turn against him. It might also not. just never know for sure. And actually, it looks like jumns skipped the Dungeon 6 heart container right there. So he is going to be finishing the game with at least maybe 7 or 8 hearts, depending on how he feels about the last part of the game. Although 7 hearts is definitely plenty for how much opportunities there are to take damage throughout the rest of the game from here on out. Having a little bit of trouble with the slimes here in the Signpost Maze. Just want to be a little bit careful about that. Meanwhile, here in Dungeon 7, if you remember Dungeon 7 casually, you might know it's the most dreadful dungeon in the game, because it's a tower-based dungeon with multiple floors, and there's a lot of rooms that you just don't need to go through. If you know the fastest way through this dungeon, then you can skip a lot of this dungeon. And there's even a sequence break that you're not going to be seeing these runners do, and that is to get the Mirror Shield early. It is possible, but due to the route that they're taking within this dungeon, getting the Mirror Shield early does not save any time. So the mechanic of this dungeon here is that you are going around carrying this metal ball around the dungeon and knocking down 4 pillars. The goal is to knock down the 3rd floor. If you look up to the 3rd floor, then the 3rd floor has nothing, and you just want to knock out the 3rd floor. Now, the ball can fall down the pit and up to the 1st floor, which is not something you want happen. There's even some parts where if you throw the ball the exact wrong way, then in the original version you can soft lock, but I don't know if you can soft lock in this dungeon in this version. TGH taking advantage of the sword recoil that you get for slashing some enemies in order to get a little bit of a boost. And there's his Mirror Shield, which is required for one reason, which is the whole reason why he's going to this dungeon now. Meanwhile, jumns did get his rooster, and he'll be on his way to the 7th dungeon now. Alright, and then now TGH is going to be fighting the hardest boss in the game. Oh my goodness, he just did it. What a legend. How does he do it? Now he gets his Nightmare Key, and now he's going to go back down another floor in order to retrieve the ball that he threw earlier. This next room coming up is called 3 of a Kind, or acronym to 3 Oaks. As you can see right here, these enemies here, you have to match their symbols in order to defeat them. And he defeats those enemies in order for that chest to appear, so that he can hook shot across that pit when he goes around this dungeon again. Alright, jumns attempt at Rooster Skip, takes a bonk right there. Meanwhile, TGH is now done with all 4 pillars here. And oh my goodness, Jumns has successfully completed his Rooster Skip. It's not really Rooster Skip, because he is using the Rooster to get across the pit here. You might notice that TGH is leaving the dungeon here. And that's because if you complete the dungeon now, then after this dungeon, Marin will be at the bridge that TGH is coming up to, which, you know, loses a minute if you have to save Marin. So while unfortunate, we gotta go fast, so I'm sorry, Marin. Marin is not gonna be saved in this run. So yeah, so TGH is not going to be completing the 7th dungeon right now, as a result. Jumps having trouble trying to hookshot this upcoming rock that he... Okay, yeah, he's given up on that. He was a little bit too far to the right in order to hookshot that rock, but it also didn't help that the Buzzy Beetle was off to get him. So, unfortunate right there. So here's the one use of the Mirror Shield here. Very nice. And they actually nerfed the damage that the flames would do there. It used to do 2.5 hearts in the original version, but now they significantly decreased the damage for some unknown reason. If there was a way to get past that flame cave without the mirror shield, and without the use of glitches, then then the runners would not have to worry about going through most of Dungeon 7 and then completing it later. So here's the Turok boss here. There was a way to skip fighting the Turtle Rock in the original version, but now you have to fight the Turtle Rock in order to get inside the dungeon. And there we go. Just like that. No problem. That fight wasn't too bad. And now off to Dungeon 8. And just like Dungeon 7's a really complicated dungeon to go through casually. And it's also very long, but if you know how to go through this dungeon, then, you know, no problem. You can skip all the optional stuff. So TGH is actually going to go for an arrow saving strat right there by foregoing using a bomb arrow right there. It loses about half a second, but it's again, negligible. So, this dungeon is actually supposed to be a mini-boss gauntlet. Most of the mini-bosses that we've been seeing throughout the game makes a return in this dungeon. Like, to the right of the room where TGH got his first key would be Rolling Bones, but since we know the fastest way through this dungeon, we pretty much skip almost every mini-boss. TGH refilling on arrows right there. He is going to be needing those arrows. Particularly for the Nightmare fight at the very end of the game. But he is grabbing the extra arrows because there are faster strats with those extra arrows later on. Alright, TGH is now off to fighting Bueno, which some of you guys might remember. Bueno is a mini-boss in, he is not a mini-boss in the... He makes a return in the Oracle games, but is a mini-boss here in this game. And the way he fought that boss was actually very precise. If you mess up that fight for any reason, then it can be pretty bad. Also, pay attention to jumps here. Oh my gosh, he also defeated this boss first try. How does he do it? These guys are legends. And here's another Hinox fight right there. With 3 dashes, that fight is really easy. Now, real quick, I want to give a shout out to Adamo, because in that part right there, one of his really old runs accidentally loaded a new file as he was trying to autosave after getting that key. And because the game autosaves right as soon as you start the game, that meant he could not come back to his previously autoload file to continue the rest of Dungeon 8, which is a really sad way to lose a run, and he was on really strong PB pace up until then, and unfortunately one of the saddest ways to lose a run, but I just had to point that out, because Adamo's a really cool guy. But anyway, TGH just got through that second cue ball fight. A little bit easier than the Dungeon 4 fight, but it's still hard. And the fact that if you miss any of your arrows right there, then that fight can go pretty bad. So what you just saw jumps do there, you might be thinking, what are these guys doing? This is glitchless. And that is that if you fall off the left or right side of the pit, then they will not fall down there. It's part of how this route works, otherwise they would have to go all the way around and go through Obstacle Cave a 3rd time in a row. Teach going for some really aggressive strats here in this ice room here. This is called the Burless room, because in the original version, you can actually get a text box if you interact with any of the ice blocks. And the text box says Burr, which is actually another quality of life change that they made in this version. Any interactable object, they took away the text box, and that you actually have to physically interact with the text boxes in order to interact with them. Very nice hot fight. It's actually harder than you made it look right there. And that's because the magic rod in this game, well, they nerfed it substantially, and which was one of the hard things I had to get used to when I was first learning this game. There's a bit of delay with the magic rod in this version, where you can only shoot two fire rod shots at a time. Magic rod shots, sorry. So you have to properly time your magic rod shots in this version in order to get a pretty good hothead fight. Jumps fighting Toro Rock right there. Should be almost down. Just needs a few more hits right here. Yeah, there we go. Alright, very nice. Okay, so now TGH is going to go back to Dungeon 7, Eagle's Tower. in order to complete the rest of the dungeon there. He has already done basically all the dungeons, so he just has to go straight to the end of the boss. Yeah, it seems like at this point now, TGH has pretty much is gradually extending his lead. This run's actually pretty crazy for him. I don't actually know what his pace is, but I mean, that doesn't really matter right now. So, Evil Eagle. Evil Eagle has like 5 different attacks that he can choose to do. The first attack is always the same. He's going to swoop. He's going to fly through with a middle pattern, and then he can either go from, and then he can give you a low swoop, a high swoop. He can do a gust attack and then do a dive attack. Okay, so Teach starts off by shooting 4 arrows. And he's not going to use any more arrows now because he needs 11. He needs those 11 arrows for the rest of the game here. Okay, Eagle's giving him a gust attack right here. Ooh, that's a very nice strat right there. Climbing the ladder to cancel the gust attack right there. I actually like that. I have never seen that strat before, but TGH definitely knows what he's doing. Meanwhile, Jumns has 3 more arrows than TGH has, so he can go a little bit more aggressive on the Evil Eagle fight whenever he goes to that fight. As he has 24 arrows going through the rest of this dungeon, as TGH had 21. So the only dungeon that TGH has left now is Angler Tunnel. And since he's already done half of the dungeon, he just needs to get the Nightmare Key and then off to Angler Fish. Jumps takes a fall right there, which means now it's gonna mess up his cycle a little bit right there. Barely makes that. That's crazy. Now, if Tej needed more health, then he could have gotten that heart piece right there, and that actually saves. And that's actually faster than picking up a heart container. He doesn't need. He feels confident that he does not need to grab that heart piece. Blano not working in Jump's favor right there. We saw that Blano got away out of a few of Jump's hits right here. Not cooperating. Okay, there we go. Much better. Alright, so normally this puzzle is random, and in order to know what the puzzle is for this, there's a room above that lets you know what your pattern is, but with RNG manipulation, TGH already knows what the pattern is. And even without the RNG manipulation, if you want to try YOLO that, there's like 4 different possibilities that puzzle can be. So you have a 25% chance of getting a puzzle correct, assuming that you know what all 4 puzzles are. Oh, TJ tried to go for a really precise jump right there. Not really getting it. This is not looking good here. His health is really dangerous now. I can probably imagine he's going to go for the heart container for Anglerfish after he defeats Anglerfish. Because having a heart and a half for the final part of the game is really dangerous. As there's a strat in the Nightmare fight where he takes 2 hearts of intentional damage. So we'll see what happens here. He just has to go through the fight first. That's the first step here. They significantly buffed up this fight, where previously in the original version you can actually just stand in a very specific spot and just smash your sword, but that doesn't really work in this version. That's a really good fight right there. Damageless, very nice. Now, If he forgoes this heart container, then that's a really bold move, but we'll see what happens. Okay, he's going to go for it. Okay, very smart decision right there. Like I said, there's a strat in the Nightmare fight where you need to use where you take 2 hearts of intentional damage. So very smart play right there, in order to ensure they can nail the strat for Nightmare. Oh, Jum's messing up this room right here. This room, there's like 27 different possibilities for this room, and they all have no difference in speed. As this Roomba here, as we call it, moves at the exact same rate every single time. So this is his way right here. We saw a different way that TGH does. So you saw 2 different methods right there. So now, as long as Teach does not go to the bottom half of the map, then the ghost will not appear. The ghost does have a possibility to spawn now that he has completed Dungeon 4, but he has no worries about that. And now he's off to the Nightmare fight here. And as traditional to any Link's Awakening marathon / race / event, we're gonna be quiet for this part of the game. Alright, so with that over, I'm looking at the timer right now, and TJ actually might get a 139 live in a race, which has never been before seen. The current race world record is 140.02 by EDL, which was performed yesterday. So TJ actually might be on pace to beat that, which is going to be really insane for him. This run has been really good for him so far. But meanwhile here, this egg pattern, you might notice, if you paid attention, TGH has never completed the rest of the training sequence. The most he's gotten is a stick from the monkey from Kennel Castle, and you're supposed to use the magnifying lens in order to know what this egg pattern is, but thanks to RNG manipulation, TGH already knows what his pattern is going to be. And so this RNG manipulation saves a substantial amount of time within the glitchless run. So now off to the Nightmare fight here. Meanwhile, Jums is going to fight Evil Eagle here as he makes his way back to Dungeon 7, Eagle Tower. So this Nightmare fight's pretty straightforward for the most part. He starts off by powdering the blob here. The first phase is the blob phase, and he starts off by powdering it. Three magic powders does the job right there. The second phase here is Gannon. The first shot, oh no, misses the first shot right off the bat. The first shot is always an energy shot, which is supposed to be free, but now he's gonna have more RNG bestowed upon him, as he now has a 50% chance at having a blue ball or an energy shot. And obviously you want energy shots. Blue balls do nothing. You can't deflect blue balls back. They just waste time. Fortunately, with this game, you cannot have more than 3 blue balls simultaneously, like in a row. So I believe that was like 1 or 2 blue balls. That's still pretty good for TGH right there. Next phase is Boldorm. All you have to do is just do spin slashes on Boldorm, just like that. His hitbox is really weird, which is how he's able to spin slash the head. And then next up is Gannon. Prepare 2 spin slash and then a dash, and takes 2 hearts of damage right there. Next up is the Landmolus phase. It takes 4 spin slashes right there, just like that, and then now for the final phase, Deathel or Death Eye. Deathel takes 10 arrows to beat, unlike in the original version where it takes 16. And you can only shoot 2 arrows per phase. You can get a 3rd arrow in if you're really good, but it's really risky given that TGH only has 10 arrows to work with, so he's probably not going to go for the 3 arrow strat. If you run out of arrows, then you can use the Magic Rod, but it does significantly less damage than arrows. And there we go, TGH with a 139. This is crazy. TGH finishes with a race time of 139.26, a fantastic race world record. That was an insane time right there for TGH. Crazy run. I'm really excited for what TGH has to offer for... I'm really excited for what TGH has for the rest of the tournament here, as he just played out of his mind here in this race. Meanwhile, Jumns is on his way to Dungeon 4. Wow, crazy stuff right there. Let's go ahead and take a look at Jump's screen now. As he is now going to be making his way to his Nightmare Key and then to the Anglerfish. Hello.
Yo, what's up?
That was crazy. Like, what was going through you? Were you aware that you were having an insane run?
I mean, I was aware, like, I don't know, my game plan going in was just to, like, not have too many major mistakes. And I think I pretty much accomplished that. Like a couple of hiccups here and there, but like I actually, honestly, the final time was better than I thought it would be. I didn't have any splits up, but the final, I was expecting something like higher, 139. But
yeah, well, that's crazy.
Still, yeah, I'll take this time for sure.
Yeah, definitely 130. This is we have not seen a 139 in any race of this, so. That's gotta have you feeling really good for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, it feels good, honestly. Like, I don't know. I put some work in like earlier today. Like I streamed like super late at night, like into early morning, and so this is like late day for me. Don't make fun of me. But yeah, it's like 1:44 p.m. But yeah, like I don't know. So like I went in like to like a practice session earlier with the aim of focusing on areas that I was having trouble with, and I don't know, like I didn't really have trouble with many areas in this run, so
yeah, that definitely paid off right there. When Jumns failed the trendy game earlier, that definitely did set you up to have a pretty early lead for you, and then I think from from like Mob and Cavern onwards, you really start to just gradually extend your lead for the rest of the run.
yeah, like this category is one where like you gain and lose your time like in little tiny segments.
Yeah, for sure.
As opposed to any percent where like like I mean like trendy game, or excuse me, not trendy. I mean trendy game included, but like Glitchless has its tricks and like huge turnarounds and runs, especially like with races and stuff. But yeah, they're not as big as any percent. So like you gotta gain your time like with little stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the things about this particular category. Like this category is definitely a very approachable category for anybody interested in picking up the game, but it's definitely a tough category to grind with all these like little things here. There's a lot of like tricky execution that players have to nail down in order to achieve times like these.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I think every category in this game has its own merits and its own appeals, and Glitchless definitely is just that. Like, it's a really good entry category for the game, or really entry category in general for speedrunning. And yeah, but you're right. At a top level, it is very hard to grind, just like any other category is for the game.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so, let's see. Let me check to see who you're going up against next. So you're going to be going up against Lime in your next round. So how do you feel against going up against Lime? 100% world record holder. How does that make you feel?
I'm looking forward to it. And I don't know, like it's funny because like whenever I race, like I'm always like, I don't know if it's like if it actually does me like good or bad, but I'm like morbidly curious about like where the other player is, so I'm always watching. Like I'm always watching the race stream. Like
okay, watching, so you were aware that you had a pretty substantial lead over Jumps this whole time. Okay.
Yeah, but like I don't really let it affect what I do.
Yeah, for sure.
And the case is the same with like whoever I play in the next round. It's like my game plan's not going to be any different. I'm just going to play as solid as I can and see if it matches up.
And this mindset when it comes to like live tournament events or like live race events, like a tournament or like or just a marathon in general, like focusing on what you know how to do best is always like super important.
Yeah.
In order to like keep pace with your opponent.
Yeah, like everybody has their own skill sets, and like I feel like mine over like the years I've been speedrunning has been consistency. And so I don't see any reason to change that for a race against like no matter who it is I'm up against.
Yeah. And that definitely has paid off for anyone who's unfamiliar outside of this particular speedrunning scene, the Zelda speedrun scenes. TGH has been known for he's definitely got some wins on a few tournaments up his sleeves, and I feel like his approaches with tournaments is really good.
Well, thank you.
Meanwhile, Jumps is actually about to wrap up his nightmare fight here. He's approaching Deathel now, and he actually might beat his best race time. His best race time is 1:50.59, and he's on pace to beat that for sure.
Yeah, looks like he's gonna beat that by like almost 3 minutes.
Ooh,
if the
going for the
timer's
3 arrows. Alright, very nice. So, Jump is going to be clocking in at a 1:48 flat. So, very good time. With him having some unfortunate luck throughout his run, there's only so much you can do about it. And it looks like Jumps is going to forego the interview for his run, but nonetheless, GG to Jumps. And it looks like Jumps is going to be up against the winner between Olivia and Bubble Bass on his lower bracket matchup. So either way, it was a really good watch between both TGH and Jumps. And if there was anything you wanted to say to Jums regarding this race, what would you say to him?
GG's. It was a good race. I've said it to him in the race time chat, but yeah, like GG's to Jums. Really, really good runner. Like, of course, any percent record holder for a time, 100% record holder for a time. Just like all around really good runner. And thanks for commentating, M-Chain. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
And thanks for restreaming this ZSR. And for like having us. And thanks for watching as well.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello. Great race. Yeah, I love doing you guys. You're nice and smooth and easy. You're a great group to restream. I gotta tell you.
Thank you.
Let me look really quick at the schedule. I'm gonna boot you guys over to the Minish Cup on ZSR1. They are a tournament that's in semifinals. The Minish Cap randomizer. Let's see, it's Friday, so we also have Ocarina of Time tonight and tomorrow and the day after, a randomizer and regular. And basically everything else. I don't know when the next yours is, though. Yeah, I don't see anything else in the schedule yet for you guys. But thanks so much for watching. Thanks for the comms, and thanks to the runners. Have a lovely evening, day.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for watching.
Bye.
Peace out.